Former US President Donald Trump seems to have some pretty harsh words against Boeing. He posted on his platform Truth Social, among other things, that Boeing should cancel their plans to build a stretched version of the 737 MAX, calling the aircraft unattractive, fat, and slow, and that the manufacturer, which he nicknamed Bad Maintenance Boeing, should have instead focused on reviving the 757. Totally unbiased there, am I right? Trump further claimed that if Boeing had listened to him, the fatal crashes of Lion Air Flight 610 and Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 could have been prevented. The crashes, which occurred within months of each other, resulted in all aircraft belonging to the 737 MAX family being grounded by Trump's own administration, following concerning similarities between the two incidents. Investigations have confirmed that the crashes were caused by both pilot error and a flaw in the design of the aircraft itself. Because the 737 MAX's more efficient engines were larger than its predecessors, they were moved higher up and farther in order to fit. This in turn resulted in the plane pointing too far upward during takeoff, which is a problem because it decreases lift. So, Boeing created MCAS to move the nose down if it's angled too far upward. Alternatively, pilots could have been provided additional training to fly the 737 MAX, but Boeing chose to include MCAS instead as it would be much cheaper. This was a problem, as the sensors MCAS relied on could produce false readings, and pilots weren't trained to respond to such a scenario, which unfortunately was what ultimately led to both crashes. Eventually, in late 2020, the FAA recertified the 737 MAX to fly after Boeing improved MCAS as well as pilot training. Fast forward to 2023, the 737 MAX has made up for its lost orders and is doing pretty well, so it seems unlikely that a re-engineered 757 might replace it anytime soon, especially since both aircraft were designed to serve completely different markets in the first place. That's not to say that Boeing can't bring back the 757 in addition to the current 737 MAX program. You see, the 757 is so uniquely good that no plane ever built has even come close to rivaling it. What makes it so special is just how versatile the aircraft is. It's capable of seating up to 240 passengers and can fly for up to 4,500 miles, making it ideal for higher demand short-haul routes as well as long-haul routes connecting smaller cities where demand simply isn't enough for airlines to use wide-bodies. It's the longest narrow-body ever built, earning it the nickname Flying Pencil. This goes to show why the 757 is still used by major airlines, with its largest operator Delta actively using 127 of them, despite the availability of more modern and fuel-efficient aircraft. But if the 757 was so irreplaceably good, why did Boeing pull it out of production in the first place? Back in the late 1970s, following the success of the 727 trijet, Boeing needed a more efficient successor that could also carry more passengers. Thus, the 757, the forefather of modern-day twin-jet narrowbodies, was born. Its popularity peaked during the 1990s, but that all changed when demand fell after 9/11, resulting in a preference for the smaller 737 on domestic routes, as there just wasn't enough demand for the 757 to be profitable. While the 757 could have been used on long and thin routes, airlines were reluctant to take the risk of introducing new routes, preferring to stick with routes guaranteed to be profitable. With the 757 having no place in the aviation landscape of the 2000s, sadly, Boeing was left with no other choice but to end production. Today, however, the reality is starkly different. Airlines have realized just how valuable lower demand long-haul routes are, resulting in the advent of aircraft like the A321XLR. Boeing has tried to follow up by enlarging the 737 MAX, but both these aircraft lack the performance of the 757 even if they have the capacity, or in the case of the A321, the range. So if there's such strong demand for the 757, why didn't Boeing revive it? The answer has to do with what made the aircraft so good in the first place, truly setting it apart from every attempt to ever replace it. You see, apart from having a long range and capacity, the 757 had a high thrust-to-weight ratio, which basically means that the aircraft was pretty overpowered. It could take off using less runway and lower takeoff speeds and climb to high altitudes really well. These features were crucial for the 757 to sustain medium to long-haul operations, as well as take off or land out of airports with smaller runways. However, in order to achieve all that power, the 757 depended on high-thrust engines such as Rolls-Royce RB211 and Pratt & Whitney 2000, which were also used in wide-body quadjets such as the 747 and the C-17. But a modern fuel-efficient engine that generates just as much power as the 757 is yet to be developed. Alternatively, Boeing could just build a new mid-range aircraft to rival the longer-range A321. The new midsize aircraft, dubbed the 797, would most likely be a smaller version of the wide-body 767, but similar to the 757 in terms of capacity and range. Several airlines have already shown interest in this new aircraft, which would fill the hole left by the 757, successfully bridging the gap between their smaller narrow-body and larger wide-body aircraft. Since it's a brand new plane, designing it alone could take up to 5 years, and that's not to mention building and testing. But unless they want Airbus to dominate the mid-range market, Boeing needs to come up with a re-engineered 757 or a similar mid-range aircraft. So Trump was right about the need to build a new mid-sized aircraft, for which the 737 MAX 10 is simply an inadequate replacement, but the 737, which he called fat, slow, and ugly, just so happens to be Boeing's best-selling plane. Let me know down in the comments if you think Boeing can bring back the iconic 757, and as always, if you found this video interesting, hit that subscribe button.